We have one match left tonight, TJ, and it's going to decide a lot. New Zealand taking on the United States of America. Let's go ahead and just rock down the rosters real quick. You should know both of these teams by now if you've been watching Hearthstone Global Games. New Zealand represented by Pathra, Ting Tong, Slayer Max, and Flame Lord. The United States represented by Amnesiac, Dog, Firebat, Hot Meowth. This is exactly how I want the final top 8 match to go. This is one team who has not lost since May 4th, another underdog story, coming up against the team that basically said to everyone else, hey, we'll see you in the top 4. Good luck.
Yeah, it's kind of, the good guys versus the bad guys a little bit. New Zealand kind of an underdog that has sort of pleasantly surprised everybody that has, followed them throughout their run to the global games. And the U.S. has, they got a little bit of swagger about them. They got some arrogance at times with a lot of their players. Most notably the one guy who tends to be their ace player, which is the Young Savage himself. So I definitely am looking forward to this one. You can see some views of the countryside there from New Zealand. And it's a beautiful place there, Rob. The Lord of the Rings was filmed there, right?
I had no idea. Like all the movies? What about The Hobbit?
We had this exact same conversation last week. Actually, the Hobbit was filmed right there in whatever that city is.
I don't know. I think it's L.A., maybe.
Not enough traffic.
All right. Well, worth pointing out here that these two teams, I had a chance to speak with both of them, and Firebat was very... Firebat, every time I've talked to him, he has focused less on his opposing team and basically on the mood in his team, the practice regimen with his team. And, he says they are feeling really good coming off the win against Taiwan. They felt they executed at the very highest level they felt they could. They actually said that they baited Taiwan 4 different times over the course of that series and felt the Taiwan bit every time. So they're coming into this feeling really confident, and they said they respect New Zealand. Obviously, if you make it to this point, you're a good team, but they are in no possible universe afraid of New Zealand.
Yeah, and I think that's how most teams felt going up against New Zealand all the way up until the point where they lost. So it's a dangerous attitude to have, but it's one that you sort of have to have. You can't you can't be scared of your opponent, but you have to look at your opponent like they're going to play as good as you are. And I think that is definitely going to happen. It's kind of funny that you talk about United States thinking that, they kind of outsmart Taiwan, which has some players that have been around Hearthstone for a long time that have played at the very highest level. New Zealand doesn't really have that. So if they can outsmart Taiwan in some of the games, we'll see if New Zealand can hold up to that because they have much less experience combined than the Taiwanese team.
You talk about the necessity of confidence, and I have to say, both of us being American, that is kind of something you get when you get your American citizenship.
When you're born.
Or born, just get your American citizenship at birth.
Yeah.
You are said, hey, here's
confidence, you say.
Here's your complimentary arrogance. You are now fit to play in any tournament ever, and you will always feel like you naturally have to. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the
I'm exuding confidence, Rob.
Is that what that is? All right, well, I'm confident that the first game is going to be a Paladin mirror.
It is.
If that doesn't end up a GIF, I just want to use that as a GIF for people. Amnesiac, though, taking on Slayer Max. Slayer Max is a player that coming in I admittedly didn't know very much about, but I've had a lot of fun watching his play style. His name definitely, he doesn't disappoint when he plays. He is someone who is always... We don't ever see him hesitate when it comes to the lethal. He just always sees it, goes for it, and overall, just a high-skill player.
Yeah, if you take out and rearrange some of the letters in Slayer Max, you get Max Slay. That's it. You can go.
No, I was waiting. I was hoping there was more.
No, that's it. I just wanted to point that out.
Is this like the whole I am Voldemort thing with the Tom Riddle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we see there as well Amnesiac, a player who is currently in a hotel. If you're wondering where his Telltale Reeboks box is, not there. Unfortunately, so you just have to make do with his swag. Ooh. Oh, look at this! Look at this pose. This is a pose for a much older man.
Yes, it is.
All right, but Amnesiac, certainly a child who needs no introduction. He has been a driving force in North American Hearthstone really since his rise last year at the Winter Playoffs.
A driving force in the competitive Hearthstone meme game as well.
Sure.
Whether they be about him or from him. So. Definitely somebody that I hope doesn't go away from the scene for a long time. And, the one thing I like about Amnesiac is he's very self-aware. Yeah. And he understands when he needs to dial it back a notch. And, when he needs to hit the... What's that saying? Put the metal all over the pedal?
Yeah, it's just...
Something like that.
Yeah. No,
I never got that saying because people don't wear metal shoes, but what have you. That saying.
There are some boots, actually, that have metal.
Steel-toed boots, yeah. Must have been regarding the steel-toed boots, but definitely a guy that he'll post on Twitter and say, I was wrong. This is what I should have done, or and light some fires and really get things going when Hearthstone's in a lull point. He definitely knows his brand, and I like that about him. He's a young guy, but he's wise beyond his years.
I was going to say, he has a lot of character, and, you see on a week-to-week basis, one week he's, at random player, hey, you're not very good, and then next week he's like, hey, we should all probably get along and promote how great Hearthstone is, so he's someone who, he knows what the Twitter meta needs.
Yeah, and Slayer Max is also someone who knows his brand. He's a guy from New Zealand that plays guitar, and so he always has a New Zealand flag and a guitar in the background.
He actually just made a Twitter account, so if you aren't following Slayer Max, you should look him up. He's a very entertaining player, and I think someone we're going to be seeing a lot more from in the future. As you said, New Zealand kind of came into this maybe lacking a little bit of that competitive pedigree you see from USA, but this has definitely at least put these 4 players on the map for New Zealand.
Yeah, he actually also, had, a lot of things to say about the format of the Hearthstone Global Games, and, some of them were positive, but there was also some negative things as well, which I like to see as players, looking at an experience like the Hearthstone Global Games, one that he's had success with, and look back and, try and work with the community to find things to make it better. And it's something that I definitely read through, and it's, something that hopefully we can take that and build upon, as New Zealand has definitely shown that they're a country to be reckoned with when it comes to Hearthstone.
All right, well, based on the opening mulligans we see, at least from New Zealand, Forbidden Healing, Dirty Rat, this is definitely going to be a little bit slower. Not sure if we'll see the N'Zoth package in this list. That's always kind of the weird random point, but for Amnesiac, we see the Peacekeeper, the Stonehill Defender, the True Silver Champion. Peacekeeper generally denotes something a little bit slower these days. It's a little bit surprising that we're getting to this point, and teams seem to have hopped off the Murloc Paladin bandwagon. Has there been anything in just the standard ladder meta, TJ, that you've seen specifically that indicates the shift away?
No, this is a global game specific thing because Murloc Paladin is still more popular than it even was in the past month or so on ladder. Especially given some of the statistics that are out there, like Vicious Syndicate, definitely indicates Murloc Paladin is actually on another bit of a rise, and Control Paladin is actually falling quite a bit because it has lost one of the tougher matchups, and also with Jade Druid becoming more popular, it sort of gained another enemy, so to speak, at those higher ranks. So Control Paladin definitely seems like something we've seen become popular, more popular in HCG over the past couple weeks, but hasn't been mimicked in any other events.
Say maybe in the Hearthstone Global Games Underground, where there's furtive whispers about which decks you bring, people just been hearing, oh, bring Control Paladin, bring Control Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, Silence Priest fell out of competitive play on ladder a long time ago, and it was still being played into global games all the way up until the round of 16. So it's a meta where you can bring decks that have very poor matchups as long as they have a few strong matchups. And I think Control Paladin is definitely one of those decks, but what we're seeing here is a good old-fashioned Control Paladin mirror.
I was going to say, grab your sleeping bags, grab some snacks. If you have some chores to get done, now's the time. Just turn it to radio mode.
I have my 2-liter bottle of water.
He's not exaggerating. It's just a giant jug of water as TJ tries to be healthy these days.
The most important thing about most things that you do in life is being hydrated when doing so. Playing Hearthstone, running, eating snacks.
Karaoke.
Yep. All of these things, it's important to be hydrated. So, PSA from TJ.
Well,
you're welcome.
In this game now, we see both players taking it slow and really just trying to figure out, get the read. Is this, in fact, just a Control Paladin mirror? Because if it is, then generally as the rule, as DreamHack rules state, obviously a different format, but the greedier the Control Paladin list is, generally the better. That's certainly, it feels like DreamHack where we see the most Control Paladin in tournament.
Yeah.
So things you want to be looking for is, the obvious thing that comes to mind is N'Zoth in the deck. N'Zoth certainly gives you an extra punch later on in the game, and if one deck is sporting N'Zoth, the other is not, this could actually just be wrapped up relatively, I don't want to say quickly, but definitively later on in the game.
And this match also sort of gets to a point where it's the first team or player to really stick a big threat on the board that can run away with it, because they can protect that big threat in a lot of different ways. But it is a swingy matchup because both of these decks, of course, have a ton of different ways to remove boards. And there is a little bit of some mind games there where, you know, sometimes you want to hold back your resources or try and bait out removal. There definitely ends up usually being, in control versus control matchups, you know, one side that ends up being sort of the beatdown that has to take the more aggressive route because they realize that they're falling behind on value. And then there's one that usually, you know, takes that more control route. And, you know, where that line sort of differentiates is, you know, can you find the removal or the healing in enough time to where the beatdown can't get you?
I wonder.
Certainly, in the early phases of this game are more just kind of... Actually, I think they're kind of interesting because a lot of teams you'll just see kind of hero power every turn, hero power every turn. They just want to conserve as much as they can and then force the opponent to eventually react to a board of, say, 3/1/1s, 4/1/1. So the jockeying for early position and the marshalling of early resources is actually very interesting to me in this matchup. It just, when you're watching it from at home, it can look a little bit painfully slow.
Yeah, it's like when they're watching wrestling. And I'm not talking about, you know, the like WWE kind of wrestling. I'm talking about like actual Olympic wrestling. There's a point where, you know, they're sort of engaged.
Hugging.
It almost looks like they're hugging. They both have like their hands on the back of each other's neck, and they're just kind of like roughing it around, but they're not actually like making any moves.
This is a lot actually how our meetings go, TJ. Yeah.
This is kind of like that situation.
Yeah.
I wish I knew more technical wrestling terms. I was never a wrestler. So
That's a little bit surprising, man, that you look like you'd be good at it.
I would say that I have wrestled, but I would not call myself a wrestler.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. The truth is out. TJ wrestles, but he's not a wrestler.
Accurate. I like to put on record that I think most people in their lifetime have wrestled, especially males.
I'm not touching that one, TJ. You're on an island there.
I wonder.
You know, it occurs to me maybe this is a situation where Slayer Max feels things are going his way. I think he understands that for Amnesiac it's really late at night. That maybe if he just takes this as slowly as possible, Amnesiac is just gonna go to bed.
Do you wrestle?
You know, with my dog.
Okay.
She's very energetic, little pup. She enjoys wrestling around, but unfortunately that's all the wrestling I'm allowed to do. I'm actually banned from wrestling in 38 states.
How many countries?
I think last I checked it was like 27. I don't know. There's some where I'm not actually sure if like the paperwork's gone through.
It's because he just puts oil on his head and nobody can ever catch him.
I mean, you're not wrong. So a stone hill on each side of the board, just holding the line, making sure nothing funny happens. Well, I should say making sure nothing fun happens, but True Silver Champion going to save the day, going to cut down the first stone hill defender.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrion has much better value, especially if this is an Azoth deck than, say, Stegadon. But at the moment, it does feel like New Zealand has more options as far as resources. They were able to get the Hydrologists out early, which Redemption can really throw a wrench in the plans of the Control Paladin deck from the other side. So at the moment, I mean, this matchup is almost impossible to tell until, one, we know which role each side is playing, who's the beatdown, and two, as we get to see the draws, once we get to the stage where the big boys are starting to be played. Thanks for the ginger ale, Ma.
All right, well, the Stegadon does come down and is going to line up pretty handily into the Stampeding Kodo, so fans of maximum value Stampeding Kodos love to see this.
They do. And I think that they could have kind of expected this, the way this game has played out, but, you know, with the options that they were given from that Stonehill defender, really wasn't much of a choice aside from to pick the minion that they thought would stick the most often. And Stegadon does have a pretty good health total for a 4-mana minion, so maybe they were hoping they'd be able to draw into Spikered Steed and live the dream of putting a steed on a steed.
Well, you know, Kodo in the beginning of the expansion was seen more often in just what was considered the standard mid-range Murloc Paladin. That was kind of before Grimscale Chum was in there. You'd see the these Stampeding Kodos. Obviously, we see those these days are kind of gone. They're not necessarily run as often in the faster versions, but yeah, you have to assume Stampeding Kodo is in the slower versions. It just never really saw its way out. It's actually just generally 2 copies. Synergizes very well with the Curator, helps deal with early boards.
Well, the one thing I think that it pairs well with is Aldor Peacekeeper. It was found in some of the faster versions that also ran Aldor Peacekeeper because of the combination of it.
Right. That's a 2014 throwback that has been used for a long time.
It's a synergy that's never gone away, and in order to play a card like Stampeding Kodo, which is very situational, is a pretty weak body for its cost, it's hard to justify playing it. You have to have a couple different key points, key benefits to it. And with Paladin, it hits a couple of those key points. You can get it for free from Curator, and you have a combo with it in your deck, which is Aldor Peacekeeper plus Stampeding Kodo to remove a big minion. So it hits a couple of those key points, and that's why it's able to be played in some of the slower Paladin decks and not really played in other slow control decks.
Yeah, it certainly wrestles down a lot of those big minions.
It does. Wrestling.
We take a moment to appreciate Amnesiac's hand and just the symmetry of it. Tyrion in the middle, 2 pair on the left, on the right, Primordial Drake in the middle. Whew. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quickly.
That's definitely some symmetry.
That's the analysis I bring to this desk. Like, I really like the layout. The cards are organized nicely. Yeah, I guess it'd be a little better if one of those Peacekeepers and one of those Doomsayers switch spots, but this is still a pretty optimal outcome.
It is.
Yeah, we talked about, the importance of trying to stick minions early on in this matchup, but Amnesiac is really yet to reach a point where he can play kind of the big threatening minions. All he has are really pieces of removal, and then Doomsayers, which are obviously not going to help you stick anything on the board.
This is a very tough matchup to try and piece together how you think the game is going to pan out from this stage.
Well, information is certainly at a premium because you really, not that either player right now has in hand really like any kind of big threat to commit, but you really kind of want to see a little bit more so you know what you're committing into.
Yeah.
Because as I said, N'Zoth is just such a big question mark in terms of how you approach this matchup. On the plus side for Amnesiac in the USA, they have a couple minions down. Stampeding Kodo is a decent size for this point. So maybe you're saying, okay, maybe this is 5 damage a turn I'm pushing. Maybe Slayer Max feels like he has to do something about this at some point, and I can see some resources expended. If not, you are just pushing damage.
Yeah, he's just going to take it slow for now. That's one of the things that this deck can do very well against its controlled counterpart, because exactly what this deck is what kind of punch this deck is gonna pack. They're not gonna surprise you out of nowhere with crazy, random effects. They're not gonna get like a Doppelganger Evolve that just, breaks you. They're not gonna get that, Primordial Glyph spell that's just gonna take you by surprise and, end the game before you expect it. You can pretty much calculate what's gonna come out on each of those power turns and account for the worst case scenario, for the very worst case scenario. So Stonehold Defender is the only thing that throws a wrench in that plan, but if they play Stonehold Defender and they don't play the taunt for a while, it's probably Tyrion.
Or Grime Street Protector.
Or Grime Street Protector.
Or Giant Mastodon.
Yeah. One way that you can sort of close out a game quicker than your opponent might think is that you make a really weak and small board that your opponent doesn't want to use their premium removal on, and then you follow it up with a Sunkeeper Terram to really drive home that damage. But I think the players are at a level at this point where they're going to be able to suspect when Sunkeeper Terram is a possibility and then play around it by removing enough of the board to where they're not threatened.
Amnesiac just casually nomming down. That is a, as I said, Amnesiac not an adult yet, but that is a grown man bite right there. That is, you're on camera, you're on the Hearthstone Global Games in front of thousands of people, and you just disrespect your food.
Zero shame.
To be so young and to be that shameless when it comes to my eating. I'm afraid people are going to judge me now. I take little bites. Don't want people to look at me funny.
Yeah, I've seen him. I wonder how Rob eats when he's not in public. Because when he eats in public, he eats like the exact opposite of what you'd expect a wrestler of his quality to eat.
I prefer the term luchador. In case you are curious, by the way, why Amnesiac is in a hotel, he and a lot of other players from North America are actually journeying to Atlanta for DreamHack Atlanta, taking place this weekend. So Amnesiac did not get kicked out of his house.
No.
Amnesiac still loves him.
She does. Still hasn't bought that shed with his prize money, but definitely still loves him.
Well, we did see the coin Ragnaros Light Lord come out, so that's finally a big body hitting the board. It's going to... it did do healing. It did bring Slayer Max back up to 29, but it's mostly there because at this point, Slayer Max is just trying to get the board rolling on, having something that patrols the board, maybe trading out some of these minions, avoiding what we were talking about with that Tareem situation.
Yeah, it is one of the minions that sort of forces out removal, because one of the things that it does is it keeps what could potentially be a pretty small and weak board alive longer than it should be. It can keep trading into minions and healing up itself, and it's one of those minions that you can't really account for what it can do in that worst case scenario. And that's what it's about, is limiting those. And so this is definitely a great way to trade into it. If you can use your health as a resource, which is pretty much the resource that you can expend the most in this matchup up until a certain point, and they're able to not expend an equality or I guess just an equality or Aldor Peacekeeper on a minion like that is a pretty huge deal as far as I'm concerned.
All right, I was wondering what he was eating. It's clear he is now burging. So he has that burger. You ever heard the term burging?
No.
When you really want it, when you're jonesing for a burger, you start burging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really porksing right now.
I was burging earlier, but then I visited the Blizzard Cafe, got myself a burger there. They have a good chef. Now, we talk a lot about kind of the big three of Stonehill Defender for Paladin. Obviously the three legendaries come to mind, but Grime Street Protector, extremely powerful, and we just saw why. As you said, leveraging that health as a resource to deal with half of the Ragnaros Light Lord HP total, but then just able to, cash in the Divine Shield on the Stampeding Kodo, trade in a 1/1 there, and then suddenly you have the board back. You really didn't have to give out much. Plus, you're establishing a 6/6, which... Again, we talked about threats that don't necessarily seem that big. It's still a 6/6, but it doesn't necessarily seem as big as some of the other threats you're going to run into.
Yeah, it's a 6/6, but it's one of those cards that's really good in these long grindy battles, but is not necessarily as good in some of the faster matches.
Right.
Because you don't know if you'll be able to, especially picking it up off a Stonehill Defender early in the game, you can never predict if you're going to have a board that it's going to be good with going into turn 7 or beyond. When this matchup you do, you almost are certainly going to have a board that's going to be good with. And in picking it in these matchups, you have to have that little bit of foresight. Galaka Crawler in the deck from Amnesiac, I mean, this deck is essentially an anti-aggro deck. Paladin is great against aggro because it has all those anti-aggro tools. And Galaka Crawler sort of just lets you have that little bit of an extra edge against one of the more aggressive decks that you have more problems with. And Galaka Crawler is one of those anti-tribal cards that right now has a ton of uses across a wide variety of decks because it is useful against Aggro Druid, Pirate Warrior, and Evolved Shaman. And also, UK Paladin, the Paladin deck that...
Now, to be fair, most decks were good against UK-based decks in the Hearthstone Global Games. So, shout out to Saddle and Raven if you're out there. That was for you. Because UK always wins.
As we all know in the Hearthstone Global Games.
We do know that. Primordial Drake comes down, softens up the board there, allows Amnesiac to just clear off and keep pushing little bits of damage there. And we are starting to get to the point where, now that we've waited through the early turns, the big threats are there. They could come out at any moment. And Primordial Drake, so incredibly powerful in a lot of decks. But really, in this style of deck, which, as you said, has all those anti-aggro tools, just wants to situate a big taunt. 4/8 stats when players were initially evaluating the card. The 4/8 stat line didn't necessarily seem amazing, but this has really stood out as one of the MVPs of Journey to Un'Goro.
Oh yeah, especially among neutral cards. This is definitely a card that a lot of players slept on.
This is seeing about as much usage as Dr. Boom did back in the day. Let that sink in.
Oh yeah, and you can put 2 of them in your deck. Let that sink in.
And it's a dragon. Let that sink in.
Whoa.
Reporting for duty.
Amnesiac might be giving up. He's starting to get full.
I was going to say, you want to cast him eating burgers?
Can he eat through the pain?
Oh, he's American. That's what we do. We sit down and we see food and we eat it.
In a way, this is fitting that Amnesiac, representing the United States of America on broadcast, is putting away a burger.
All right, well, Slayer Max put away a hero power last turn. Had options to just go ahead and fully remove the board, but for reasons we were discussing early on, you really just don't want to commit the premium removal all willy-nilly.
You don't.
I wonder.
You don't want to do anything willy-nilly. Willy-nilly.
Reporting for duty.
And Mage not feeling like he has to commit more resources again. This is just him pushing damage at this point. He's saying, Slayer Max, you are at some point going to have to respond to this. You may have forbidden healings. I've already seen a Light Lord. You may have a lay on hands in there somewhere, but at some point, if this damage keeps happening, you are going to have to commit something to get rid of it.
Yeah, at this point, his hand is full. So he's got to use something.
Let me.
Let's take a look at the options. Equality Consecration is a possibility. Equality Primordial Drake is a possibility. Equality Consecration doesn't allow for much development, so that seems like one of the weaker of the options.
Even Pyromancer Equality, though, what are you really doing with the 6 mana? Like, if you could just have an extra mana and just 7 left over,
Yeah.
then suddenly you would feel maybe a little bit better. Although Curator may actually pull too many cards into your hand, so actually that might actually just be a bad thing.
Yeah, the
you just
thing
play a
that-
6/6.
The one that jumps out to me the most would be Equality Primordial Drake. They could also go with something really weird, like Wild Pyromancer Consecration Redemption, and then go into next turn where you would play a big drop. For example, if they had Tyrion in their hand, or if they hadn't played Ragnaros Lightlord, that play would have been more appealing because they could isolate that target, that big minion next turn once the board was clear on one of those big targets. That would have cleared the board completely, but it wouldn't have left them with anything. It just would have been a potential power turn for the following turn. But this was the one that jumped out to me the most because it's the only play that lets them develop behind the board clear.
Well, now they have a 4/8, but, just perhaps more importantly for the moment, they have the board. Amnesiac is not pinging them for 6 or 7 damage a turn. On Amnesiac's side of the board, if they were to just try to put down the Doomsayer, get a little bit cute, try to deal with the Drake, obviously the True Silver is equipped. You see that the damage is there. That's not really going to accomplish anything. What are you thinking at this point? Are you thinking it's just maybe just time to jam Tyrion?
Maybe. Probably.
Move quickly.
Tyrion's one of those cards where a lot of times you're like, I don't really see like a clear, amazing play. What if I just played Tyrion Fordring?
Yeah, he's a play that a lot of times you want to make on an empty board, but it doesn't really line up too well against the play right now. I was thinking about a play with Doomsayer, but I didn't think about this line. This seems like a very aggressive play onto the board, and I think this is to ensure that they get to play Tyrion on an empty board, or to try and force out a ton of removal. The one thing about Doomsayers is that they really get useless as the game goes. Oh no. Dirty Rat.
What are you pulling?
I'm 100% positive that Dirty Rat wrestles.
Let me.
Well, I mean, the stance is kind of a dead giveaway.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's kind of got like a little horse stance going on.
well said. They're gonna try and figure out what's the best way, if they can remove, if they want to remove, and if not,
I wonder.
play the guessing game of what are we gonna pull out with this Dirty Rat?
I really like Dirty Rat here. I think you're at the point in the game where you know that there's at least one really good card in hand that you could just pull out, and this matchup gets so close that, okay,
Wow, that's pretty good.
that's big.
That is big.
Now, the Redemption, I believe, would bring back the Primordial Drake here at 1 health.
Yep. Well, that's another big threat. But they're sort of in the same position that they were earlier, just they've lost 2 Doomsayers, a
And a
Primordial
Peacekeeper.
Drake,
Yeah.
and an Outdoor Peacekeeper.
And lest we forget that poor 1/1 Silverhand Covenant Knight.
There you go.
Yeah, he had a family.
Arguable.
I wonder.
Now, we talked about that generally, yes, with Tyrion, you want to put it out onto an empty board. Realistically, that issue is largely, I think, at least some degree mitigated by the fact that Slayer Max doesn't have anything on board where it's just a token he's throwing into it, right? Or a small drop. He still has to either use the weapon, he still has to use the Primordial Drake. But yeah, to your point, Amnesiac really did want to set up a situation where Tyrion could just come down uncontested.
Yeah. And so maybe this changes the plan, especially since they drew Ragnaros Lightlord. Ragnaros Lightlord seems like definitely a play that's better on this board because you can sort of trade over. Actually, this is a cute use.
I mean, I assume that's where you want the Ragnar's healing effect to
At this
go.
point, yeah. Forbidden Healing, I guess they sort of have conceded the fact that if it gets to those later stages of the game, they won't necessarily need the healing anymore because in Control Paladin versus Control Paladin, at a certain point, one player has a very dominant board and the other player is struggling to deal with it, and you're going to win through that way anyway. You're not going to be able to win by buying yourself another turn, essentially. So being able to utilize it here to clear off a 4/1, it's kind of like 0 mana removal. It's an enrage in that case that also damages your minions.
I just want to point out, in case anyone else was keeping track, because for me it's the most interesting part of this match, Amnesiac just put down another burger. I think we're at 3.
I don't think so. I think that's the same one.
No, he definitely finished off at least 1.
Okay.
Pretty sure this is 3, though.
I'm glad we've set that precedent.
I just want to go to the interview now.
Me too.
This seems like a poor precedent to root for a team, but, you know, I got to know.
Slayer Max still seems like he has a lot of time to put down whatever food he sees fit to challenge Amnesiac, because this match still has a little bit of a ways to go.
The problem is I don't even think Slayer Max knows about this match within a match.
He doesn't. He definitely doesn't.
Unless Amnesiac just hit him up in chat's like, yo, I've eaten 3 burgers.
How many have you eaten?
We did actually, production was kind enough to let us know it's 2 burgers. So Amnesiac is still within a reasonable limit.
Yeah, I thought it was 2. He's also down a couple of French fries as well as a miscellaneous beverage, which seemed to hold the same consistency as a milkshake.
That is ambitious.
It is.
Old man Rob sees that and my jeans get tighter just thinking about it. Like, oof, seems bad.
A meal too big the night before makes me a sad boy the next day. But Amnesiac, he's got tennis practice tomorrow. He's got to load up. He's got to carb up.
No,
he's got a carb load, man.
You don't have tennis practice when you're at DreamHack Atlanta.
Ah, yes.
He's got a carb load for all the Hearthstone he's going to play.
Yes.
Quickly.
All right, well, the Tyrion did come down. Amnesiac kind of gave up on that dream of an empty board Tyrion. But this was the Tyrion. He got up the Stonehill Defender. So, you know, this Tyrion is a little more, you can be a little more willy-nilly with it. But because he was, Slayer Max is able to easily deal with it now.
Reporting for duty.
USA and Amnesiac starting to run out of resources just a little bit. And, you know, that's what I sort of said earlier. It seemed like the U.S. was the beatdown for a while. They just couldn't keep up with the resources. New Zealand was very patient with their removal. They set things up well. The Dirty Rat ended up being a key draw because it pulled out the Primordial Drake for free.
Well, I don't necessarily want to.
Enter, you are the beatdown, or you see yourself long enough to become the villain.
You see yourself be down.
Let me think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, TJ. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to count this one as over, though. The United States still have a natural copy of Tyrion. They're 2 cards behind on fatigue, at least at the moment. So there are some bright spots. There's a lot of matches to go. Again, we still, I would imagine, just from what we've seen, neither player has N'Zoth in there. But
Yeah, we
That
haven't
could-
seen any of the indicators, which is
Yeah.
basically just Cairn and sometimes Infestatorin. Very rarely Twilight Summoner.
oh, I haven't seen Twilight Summoner in quite some time. All right, there is the natural copy of Tyrion for Slayer Max. But he's facing down 12 damage on the board and then another 5 from the weapon, so has to do something to deal with this. Consecration Pyromancer lines up really reasonably to get rid of most of the power.
I wonder.
Almost all of the power. You could go for Hydrologist plus pick up a secret, be able to play that as well, alongside the Wild Pyromancer Consecration, but it would clear your own board in doing so. And it would just be able to essentially be the difference of getting through a 3-1. So I think this is definitely better. And yeah, like you said, the New Zealand's not out of the woods yet because that Ashbringer can, you know, be a lot of damage over the course of the 3 turns that it's live. And all of a sudden, if the United States picks up one big draw in the deck, you know, one big threat in the deck, they could be able to turn the corner. They have removal in their hand. Glocka Crawler's kind of dead. Repentance may be kind of dead, depending on how they can line that up. But it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for them.
Ooh, this is interesting to me now. Okay, so the Getaway Coda, they're basically saying, okay, we're just going to take another Hydrologist. Noble Sacrifice, there's reason to believe that the Noble Sacrifice would have actually prevented 5 damage there. Which, given their health total in the equipped Ashbringer, certainly seems pretty relevant.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, you know, we've been talking about how this matchup is very much a value grind in a lot of respects. So, you know, what's more value than Getaway Kodo? But you have to be vigilant about your health total.
Yes. Getaway Kodo could essentially do the same thing, but you also get an additional 2/2 because it could block the 5 damage next turn.
TJ gets it.
Reminds me of
A scene in The Conjuring.
no, this is a different story. We're going down a different path here.
Are we retiring The Conjuring for the night?
There's a yogurt land near my home. For those of you who don't know, it's a frozen yogurt place. It's a place that sells frozen yogurt. You weigh your frozen yogurt, but with how much it weighs.
I just want to point out that United States has lethal damage, but TJ, go on.
Okay, lethal damage set up on board,
Yep.
so New Zealand needs to defend against it, but they have plenty of tools to do so.
Meanwhile, back about Yogurtland.
While they think, you base how much you pay is on how much your yogurt weighs. And when you go to pay, at least the one by my home, I don't know if any other ones do this, but if you guess the exact amount that your frozen yogurt costs, you get it for free.
How was that? What started that story?
I was trying to, at one point in this match, guess who was going to win. And it was almost as hard as guessing the exact amount of how much your yogurt would cost to get it for free.
Do you ever get that right?
But now it's getting closer. At this point, it's almost like the yogurt is within $1 range. So, they narrowed it down for me. The guy was feeling like he was in a good mood. And every time New Zealand plays a big threat, it's like they're narrowing the range that it could possibly be.
That's beautiful.
My yogurt is almost free right now.
All right, checks out.
Did I enrich your life?
My life is certainly richer. I assume chat is also equally appreciative of the wisdom with which you bestowed upon them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we see here, Amnesiac, you alluded to the fact that the resources were kind of drying up a little bit, and that's exactly what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, the resources are dried up. The one saving grace that the USA has is they have put New Zealand down quite a bit of health. 10 health is all they have to work with, and as far as I'm concerned, they really don't have much healing left in the deck. They've used Ragnaros Lightlord. They've used a copy of Forbidden Healing, which is usually the only healing left in the deck. The only healing they have left would be Choose Over Champions.
I wonder.
Taunts you can get through with the Quality Consecration, which they do have. It's just going to be about piecing together those final points of damage, which is going to be the tough part for the U.S., especially since they're playing off the top of their deck. in a deck with like Control Paladin, which does not have much card draw. They have Generation, like Stonehill Defender,
Let me
but
think.
not much card draw.
I was going to say, Slayer Max looking at that Tyrion Forging. I really like Tyrion Getaway Kodo here.
Yeah, you're almost guaranteeing that you get a big target regardless. You know that the U.S. has established they're running out of resources. They're trying to beat the beatdown in the matchup. And so by ensuring you get one of these big taunts back into your hand, you almost guarantee a victory at that stage because you can just keep chaining taunts together over and over again, and it doesn't feel like they'll ever be able to get through. And another weapon drawn, that's actually not bad because theoretically that's the extra damage that they need to push through. But are they going to be able to do that? So they can attack in with the Galaka Crawler into the Tyrion, realize that it's not Noble Sacrifice, the Quality Consecration.
I was going to say, the secret suddenly makes this situation a little bit fuzzier.
If it's Redemption, wait. If they push through, so they deal the 2 damage, they could push through for lethal with a Quality Consecration, but if it's Noble Sacrifice, they can't. If it's Redemption, they can't. So this is lethal damage. It just depends on how they play around the secrets. Equality first. If it's Redemption, the Primordial Drake would come back because it would be out first. But it looks like they've done it.
I was going to say, knowing what I know of the USA team, they're going to always go for the opportunity to just find the lethal.
Oh, it's 100% correct to go for it all the time,
right.
Even if you have the possibility. And it was smart of New Zealand to go for, what was essentially probably a bluff in that situation because there was 2 dead cards in the hand.
If it had checked out the way they wanted that to, that was a situation where USA was essentially just out of resources. They were living off the top of their deck. They weren't stringing anything together that would have allowed them to win. So I definitely like the play from New Zealand.
Yeah, and I also like the play for the U.S., not trying to be fancy with playing around too many secrets. With lethal damage on board and a secret up, you can get caught in the situation in control matchups where you've been playing so long and trying to play around so many things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you look at your hand and say, there's no way I'm winning if this is a secret that, prevents me from getting lethal this turn. So you just go all for it. So I like the way that they played it at the end there, just saying, well, if you have a different secret other than something that prevents us from getting lethal, you got us.
Yeah, it's very much the play style that has made USA such a deadly opponent to so many teams across the global games, which is they are very, very logical in their decision making and they're very math oriented. So being able to make the line and say, okay, this wins us the game. If not, we probably weren't going to win the game anyway.
Yeah.
Has been very good for them. We see there up next, so it's going to be Dog taking on Flame Lord. Dog going to be rocking the Druid, Flame Lord on the Warrior. Warrior, we haven't necessarily seen too much in the way of changes throughout the course of the Journey to Un'Goro meta. Occasionally someone will, it's usually just Navi. Occasionally Navi will try to be like, no, look, here's a control deck that doesn't use the quest, and then Kolento will go to the Spring Championship and say, hey, this is a quest, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Warrior's pretty much been in the same spot. Dog, I believe when we've seen him play up until this point, we have seen a fair bit of aggro Druid from him.
Yeah, early on it was a little bit weird because USA had this thing where they would just consistently put people on decks that you wouldn't expect them to be on. Dog played Pirate Warrior a couple weeks. He played Aggro Druid a couple weeks. You look at, it was kind of a smart thing from USA because you look at Dog and you think, well, he's a control player, he's a combo player. We can't expect him to be playing these aggressive decks. But then he did. So I'm curious if they're going to change up their strategy now, where people expect Dog to be playing aggressive decks because that's what he's done in HGG, but he switches it up and plays something more control-oriented.
Well, we talked to Amnesiac really early on here in the North American office for the Global Games, and Amnesiac even said that they put such a premium on just curveballing people, right? Making sure that they are unpredictable in what they do. They put a very high premium on that. So based on the question you just asked, I have to assume that they're going to continue to do that, and I think it's really difficult to predict a team like USA.
Oh, yeah.
The team there is one that is good across so many different decks. If you watch them stream, which you absolutely should, they're generally checking in across multiple different deck types, different classes. They're not a group of players that really feel constricted to one play style.
Yeah, and, it's kind of funny to think that, wow, Dog could throw a curveball by playing a slower Druid deck. Because if you watch Dog, stream and play, or even just stream and play over the past couple of years, he became known in the scene when he first started streaming for Ramp Druid, and then he always played slower Druid decks, even playing Ramp Druid in the age of Combo Druid, like ramp Druid, not combo ramp Druid. And now he plays Jade Druid more than any other Druid outside of HCG, but in HCG, he's played Aggro Druid. So it's crazy to think that, wow, Dog could throw a curveball by playing Jade Druid.
Right, and obviously Dog these days is more known for his disappointing stubbornness when it comes to not taking off his shirt during his stream. Obviously, that's what the population generally wants, but Dog refuses to give it, so we have to identify him as a control player until such a time where he changes his policy on that.
Yeah, I actually asked him one time. It was like pretty much a joke question, and I felt bad asking it because I know that 100 people every day ask him when they donate to a stream. I was like, are you ever going to take your shirt off? Like, are you ever going to make like a grand thing out of it? And he gave me like a really like serious heart-to-heart, and he says, if I take my shirt off, they'll stop watching. And I was like, whoa. Like a super serious answer. Like he actually thinks that if his shirt comes off, he will lose viewers because they have nothing to do anymore. They're like, well, now what?
No, that's fair. It's an interesting advertising hook when you think about it. People come in there all the time and just donate to, send him loving messages. And, if he ever truly gives them what they want, would they still visit?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One player known for that. Now, Flame Lord known for his immaculate posture.
He did break his posture in the matches last week a little bit, and
Right.
I was slightly worried, but they were able to pull out the match in the end, despite the break in Flame Lord's posture. But yeah, he's always sitting up straight, and always playing straight too.
Never let it be said that Hearthstone doesn't have amazing story elements because we're just going in on the Flame Lord posture narrative. Like, why is his posture so good? Was it always this good? Will it ever not be this good?
Is it good only when he plays Hearthstone, or is it good when he does other activities outside of the game?
Well, we'll get to find out here.
Broken posture a little bit.
Well, Amnesiac talking about throwing curveballs. Maybe Flame Lord is also throwing curveballs by having sub-stellar posture. But enough jokes. Let's talk about this game. Pirate Warrior versus Jade Druid. This is a matchup where Pirate Warrior generally feasts, right? They get that strong early start, but the Druid certainly has the ability to correct the matchup should it go late.
A lot of people are surprised to know that this matchup is actually very close to 50-50 when it comes to just sort of the breakdown of the matchup. If you look at, various meta reports, even if you look at, when I've talked to players about, their personal data when practicing decks for tournaments, Jade Druid and Pirate Warrior usually go head-to-head when we're talking about the highest level of plays and usually come out with about equal win rates when faced up against each other. And a lot of people are like, wow, that can't be true. Usually Jade Druid struggles against aggressive decks. Well, Pirate Warrior is a different type of aggressive deck where they're very front-loaded. And they're very, one-dimensional. They are not subtle about their game plan. They equip weapons. They play, one very strong minion a turn, and they snowball that. Whereas Druid, that's what they deal with well. They deal with the front-loaded damage. What they don't deal well with is damage from hand or longevity with their damage. And so they're good at dealing with that one minion, and then stabilizing later in the game when all you have is weapons and with their taunts and with their late game armor gain. So it's not as good against a board that goes wide like Evolved Shaman. It's not as good against Druid, which goes all in on a board early on that their spot removal can't handle. But it's much better against Pirate Warrior because they do have time for the armor gain and their taunts do matter more. Yeah, analysis!
Got him. Yeah, we saw the rope winding down there. Flame Lord, obviously just looking to figure out exactly what the next few turns on his end were going to look like. The one drop coming in just a little bit late there, which is, unfortunate, but he still has a pretty powerful early curve. Looking over at Dog's hand, Dog has the ability to at least get some ramp going. He has that Feral Rage, which, you can use it to remove something, say a Frothing Berserker, that feels pretty good. But a lot of times you just want the survivability of it. Swipe is solid. Vandrel doesn't always hit the sort of value you'd like him to hit in this sort of matchup because he does require the initial mana investment, but overall I think Dog's hand is actually pretty okay against what kind of curve he's facing from Flame Lord. What do you think?
It's reasonable, but you really need sort of the power tools and you really need like early board development. Ramp is good. You don't want too much ramp because you also need the option to be able to play removal. Vandal a lot of times is just played on turn 4 to threaten things, to try and force the Pirate Warrior to take damage away from your face and kill something that could punish them heavily the following turn. But the hand definitely is reasonable. I wouldn't say great. An Innervate would make it really good. A Wrath would make it even better. And then you really need to find the taunts after you find that ramp and after you find that early removal. Voidborn is just going to go ahead and go with the N'Zoth's first Innervate this turn, despite it being a turn late, which really gives the United States some information about the hand. Innervate is fantastic. Maybe not just for this turn, but for the game plan as a whole, because that's going to allow them to have that one power turn that's going to be able to swing the game in their favor potentially. Coin Jade Blossom.
Yeah, that'll put on 4 mana next turn. And perhaps more importantly at the moment, put a minion down to get hit by a Rusty Hook.
Saves you a health. Gains you a mana. Saves you a health. Ramps your Jade. All of these things are good.
What can Jade Golem do for you?
Save you a health. Ramp you a mana.
Oh, you actually, yeah, you already answered that. So this is a situation where it feels very organic to get the Frothing Berserker down. Go ahead and make that trade, or not trade rather, but ping the 1/1 Jade Golem with that Rusty Hook, and then you are essentially saying, hey, don't swipe, man. Come on. It's a family show.
They kind of always do, it feels like. But at the moment, again, Pirate Warrior does not have a subtle game plan. They don't have a game plan that is flexible, that you can mend on the fly to try and fit any type of situation.
Oh no, hitting them really hard isn't working. Let's take this to late. No.
Oh no, my board is vulnerable to swipe. In order for me to play around swipe, I need to not make the board. And if I do not make board, I do not hit face, and I cannot win. And so it's a situation where they have to play into it, hope they don't have it, and the United States just continues to draw cards that are incredible in the matchup. Maybe not in the order that they'd want to, but definitely still a position that they're happy to be in. Next turn, there's even a potential Fandral plus Innervate Feral Rage situation where they can gain the armor, remove the minion, and present the threat of Fandral, which can at times be a must-kill depending on your read of the hand.
Yeah, a lot of times, though, in this matchup, if a Fandral is out and your opponent is above 20 health, you just kind of go, ugh, train's left the station.
Yeah. And you miss the train.
You are watching the train drive away with the woman you were going to marry. She also has her suitcases.
And your laptop's in there. So now you can't play video games anymore.
Yeah, and your phone's almost dead.
I think we need to modernize that state, saying. The phone has left the charger. Seemed good in my head.
No, that wouldn't work. I don't know. It's hard to make that one clever. Maybe we're just not good at it.
The cheeseburger has left the amnesiac.
Well, I hope that's not something we talk about. Well,
No, I meant the cheeseburger was taken away before he ate it.
Okay.
Let me be clear. So again, Fandral plus Innervate Feral Rage allows you to get through the Cork on Elite. Of course, you get sort of half the value. You get double the value from Feral Rage, but you only get half the value of one half of the Feral Rage. So 25%. You get 25% less value because you have to trade into a 4-attack minion.
I feel like people at home who listen to you talk don't understand how good at Hearthstone you are because of the wording in which you communicate some of the analysis, but I have watched TJ play. TJ is a good Hearthstone player.
Thank you, Rob, for standing up for me.
I won't let chat bully you. You're my friend. And just goes ahead and chooses to sit on the Innervate and the Feral Rage. And I don't necessarily dislike this. You have the Auctioneer, and a lot of times, as I was saying earlier, Auctioneer and Innervate go together like peanut butter and jelly. Just a good pair.
Like amnesiac and cheeseburgers.
There you go.
Just gonna drive that one home, baby.
Something Conjuring Wrestling.
Yes.
Okay.
They don't have a great play with Gadget and Auctioneer next turn out with the Innervate.
Right,
But they're giving themselves options.
Yep.
Which I like. You know, Fandral, we talked about, kind of a must kill. This allows them to gain that little bit of armor, have the mana utilization, challenge the Kor'kron Elite on board plus some. And what it does do is it doesn't leave the Fandral vulnerable to Arcanite Reaper. And, you know, that's one thing that if they had played last turn, if they had gone with the Feral Rage, again, they're not getting full value out of the armor because they're chipping off half their armor already. And also, if Arcanite Reaper comes out and kills the Fandral, they've used their Innervate. So they go into 5 mana with 0 development. So I definitely think that this is a little bit of a better line than, you know, going with the Fandral Innervate Feral Rage, especially going into a turn 5 where Arcanite Reaper is the most likely play, and then you have a dead turn after that. Gadgets
and praise aside, this is certainly a bit of a weird turn as well. Now you could Gadgets and Innervate Wild Growth, and the next turn you go into your Drake turn.
Yeah.
But the Primordial Drake in this matchup is oftentimes not nearly as powerful or swingy as it is, say, against the Bloodlust Shaman or a Hunter, where a lot of the minions just generally die to the Primordial Drake.
Yeah, I mean, it is just an 8 health taunt that they have to get through. And with Power Warrior decks running one Spellbreaker, that's literally the only thing they can get through. And with double taunts being drawn, this is going to be, I think, very difficult for New Zealand to come back in.
Yeah, we talked about, you know, Dog looking at the plays, and it didn't seem like the Auctioneer was necessarily going to be that impactful, but we did see that he basically realized, okay, I can just go into Innervate Wild Growth. I'm on 8 mana. That seems like an okay situation.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if that is your worst case scenario, that's still a pretty good scenario. And he wasn't facing down a ton of pressure. He was, I believe, at 26 health with the scales.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's plenty healthy.
Yeah. So this turn has got to be pretty straightforward. You can't afford to play Spellbreaker on a Gads and Auctioneer, especially since you're leaving the 4 health or the 4 attack body around, and you know how powerful the taunts would be against you should they come out. So I think you just have to trade the Kor'kron Elite in here, Bloodcell Raider, and South Sea Captain. There's a nod towards leaving the Gadgetzan up, but that is incredibly dangerous, especially in a deck like this one. You just sort of have to take it, and I think the biggest decision point here is whether or not to attack with the Fire War Axe. And they don't, it's whether it's the likelihood of, what do you think is more likely? You drawing a more powerful weapon next turn, or you drawing something to buff your weapon? And considering they have 2 upgrades plus 2 Bloodsoaked Cultists in the deck, and, you know, really only 2 Arcanite Reapers that would change their game plan of attacking last turn, it's better to hold on to the charge.
I still think you have to at least entertain the notion of possibly leaving the Gadgetzan up. Obviously, I don't think that's the conclusion to arrive at, but you realize there is a window, and the window is closing pretty rapidly in which you can win this game. The Wrath off the top allows the United States to deal with the Captain, put down an eye, and again, they're on turn 8 for them. They're going into turn 9, and they're at 21 health against the Pirate Warrior. I mean, that feels pretty good. I'm not saying they're out of the woods just yet, because Pirate Warrior certainly has big combo potential to do a bunch of damage, but, you know, you've seen a Heroic Strike, you've seen a Kor'kron. The pieces are starting to come together to where, you know, you don't feel like you have to jam the 4-8 with Taunt. You feel like, okay, I can just Wrath, get rid of the South Sea Captain, and then play down the Aya, fills out all my mana. Good turn.
Yeah, those Pirate Warrior combos, those Wombo combos. Leroy Jenkins Heroic Strike.
Oh man, I was just thinking like Heroes of the Storm style casting, like South Sea Captain into Bloodcell Raider.
You gave her up?
I think I heard something.
Woo!
Ooh, the Spellbreaker now is just coming out.
Oh wow.
Well, I mean, I like this because it's you just want a 4-3 on the board.
True.
I mean, look, you understand that you're setting yourself up for a situation where you're going to be punished. But again, the window, there's like only a little bit of breeze coming in now. Like it's starting to get really warm in your room, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, this is going to be really tough. I think they realized that if a big taunt were to come down, it would be hard for them to win anyway.
Okay.
So they want to try and deny.
This is a little bit of daylight here. You use that Heroic Strike. You put the Spellbreaker in. I say you got the Leroy. Hope there isn't a second big taunt. Hope the life gain isn't there.
I mean, you push 9 damage. You put them down to 6 in that case.
But you need to be prepared for a situation where you say draw Arcanite Reaper.
Yeah, I don't know about the Leroy usage, but you know, Flame Lord's look kind of says it all here. Right now, New Zealand, they have not lost a match in a long time, and they're currently down 1-0 and looking like they're in a situation where they could be down 2-0. This would be a brutal loss for them, getting this far, surprising so many people. Having watched another one of their underdog brethren in Mexico lose in the past match to a powerhouse country, and now going up against this powerhouse country,
Yeah,
and going down 2-0, that is brutal.
As Mexico fell, they actually threw the baton to New Zealand and said, you have to do it for all of us.
The underdog baton. The underrepresented Hearthstone country baton.
Well, this turn's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, this is, from this stage, almost a guaranteed win for the United States. I don't even think there's many possibilities for New Zealand to piece together, if they could pick the draws from their deck, a way to beat this hand from the United States. Arcanite Reaper is checked by Gluttonous Ooze. Burn damage, whether like double Mortal Strike, is checked by Feral Rage. Even if that were to be the case, the hero power is just going to continuously, behind these taunts, get the US out of range of any possibility of damage, and the Nourish is going to be able to find them more resources to try and find minions to close out the game. So,
yeah,
grim situation.
We talk about how New Zealand hasn't lost a series since May 4th, but the last 2 series they did win. It was 3-2, right? It was getting close. They might have started to feel like, okay, this is starting to get close now, because a lot of the series they won, they actually just went 3-0 or 3-1. But yeah, this one is, they're looking like they're going to be down 0-2 really quickly. Well, I wouldn't say really quickly. That first match was
The first match was like 45 minutes long.
You could have written that paper that was due tomorrow in the time that match took place.
Yeah. You could have eaten 2 burgers and french fries in the amount of time that match took to do.
You could have watched 2 episodes of your favorite anime.
I wonder.
TJ, what is your favorite anime? You don't watch anime.
Beyblades.
Okay.
It's like fidget spinners. They throw on the ground and they do battle.
I have actually never heard of Beyblades. Yeah, an upgrade off the top for New Zealand was absolutely nowhere near what they needed there. So, Flamelord's going to go ahead and stick it out, though, realizing, hey, maybe something happens, something crazy. Maybe Dog's internet goes out. But, you know, you're at this stage. You're 1 series away from being in the top 4. I think you always play it out.
You play it out. Even if it's just to decide on your strategy for the next game. Say, hey, what decks are we going to pick for the next game? You do have a time limit. Even if it's to just sort of like remind everybody, hey, you know, even though we're probably going to be down 2-0, don't let that discourage you. We still have plenty of game left. Take it game by game. There's a lot of things that you could be doing in that time. And when you're playing for as big of stakes as this, you better believe that I'm staying in until the very last point of damage is dealt, or close to it.
Meanwhile, Dog's like, why won't they concede? They are beaten.
Yeah. I was just wondering how anybody comes back from a situation like this. If New Zealand could see the Gluttonous Ooze plus the Jade Behemoth in hand, or to double Gluttonous Ooze, that's actually
very unique.
Yeah, it's very unique. Usually 1 Gluttonous Ooze is the choice, but I think the US was really trying to, you know, take this specific matchup. Looks like their deck is designed to have a ton of game against Pirate Warrior.
Yeah, none of these draws anywhere near enough, and they're actually facing down lethal damage themselves. So the concede does finally come out, and Dog's like, finally.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And 2-0 for the United States, 1 game away from securing that spot at the live finals for the Global Games.
Yeah, I don't want to count New Zealand out yet. There's still the potential for something to happen there, but goodness, if the USA manages to pull this out, we're looking at Czech Republic, Ukraine, South Korea, and USA for a top 4, and
that's insane.
That is quite a lineup for the live finals.
Oh yeah, and US, you know, even if they go into each of these 3 games over the next 3 games, and they're all unfavored matchups, they're still favored to win on board. And there you can see what the next match is going to be. Hot Meowth on Warrior Pathra on Shaman. So a lot of different ways that this can go. Evolved Shaman is really the only, super strong archetype of Shaman currently, but Warrior has two very different ones that have very different matchups against that Evolved Shaman. Pirate Warrior is pretty weak against it, and Taunt Warrior is pretty strong against it.
Not that you would know from what we've seen in the global games. I actually feel like the Shaman, at least from what we've seen in the broadcasted matches, the Bloodlust Shaman has actually performed really well against the Taunt Warrior.
We've seen some pretty fringe cases of it, though, I think. If Taiwan had pulled the trigger on the Brawl last week against the United States in that matchup, maybe that matchup would have panned out differently. The United States seemed like they knew how to play that matchup nearly perfectly from their side. Taiwan, maybe not. It just seemed like they had some shaky plays towards the end there. So I think not everything is cut and dry when it comes to matchups, especially in this case where in global games you do see matchups that you rarely see elsewhere.
That's true. And, you talked a little bit about Shaman. Obviously, Shaman, as we mentioned earlier, has seen some new innovations lately, some changes. It's going back towards a little bit more in the direction of elementals, which we saw at the beginning of the set. But, I want to highlight the fact that realistically, Pathra and New Zealand haven't really been the sort of individuals who are out there testing different deck lists. Generally, Pathra specifically is someone who waits till those best deck lists are kind of made, and then she learns to pilot them at a really high level. So I would be surprised if this is just not Bloodlust Shaman. It just seems like in a vacuum, Bloodlust Shaman has been the Shaman of choice that people have landed on as just being the strongest.
Yeah. And Elemental Shaman, I just don't think has enough strengths to have it played over a deck like Evolved Shaman, because Evolved Shaman just has pretty good matchups across the board. It doesn't have many matchups that hard counter it.
Yeah, we see Pathra's Cameron there, and then Hot Meowth is actually just Garage, which, if you didn't see today, actually, Heroes of the Storm announced that that'll be the next hero hopping into the Nexus. So I know I am personally excited about finally a mature, bald character I can play. Just my idol,
There's gotta be another bald character in Heroes of the Storm already.
If Garrosh can lead the
Thrall
true
bald?
horde, surely I can be a good caster one day. Like, I look at that, that's my motivational poster.
I think first step is a 6-pack.
It's in my fridge.
Second step, fangs.
Not in my fridge. All right, we'll see Hot Meowth is going to be on Quest Warrior. So, yeah, we brought it up. The reason why Quest Warrior generally fares so well against the Bloodlust Shaman over a large sample size is the Taunt Warrior just has so many sweeps, and it just keeps kicking the Shaman off the board. They don't generally have to rush. What do you think about keeping the Quest in this matchup?
It goes back and forth. If you look at widespread statistics, so community-gathered statistics. So I'm talking about like Vicious Syndicate.
You're talking about statistics gathered by the community.
Yes. Community statistics gathered by. Then
Communities.
You can see a trend where if you throw away Quest, there's a slight increase in win rate. But a lot of times, those type of statistics are not beneficial to pro or competitive players because they play matchups differently, and those take into account a wide range of skill on the other end of the deck. I think that we saw what was evident in the play from Taiwan was the fact that they threw away the quests, pigeonholed them into playing one certain style, and that was attrition. Whereas if you keep the quest, you can play attrition, but you also have the backup style of if you sort of run out of value, and if the Shaman really plays for value, you have the added win condition of being able to use the Sophoros hero power and shorten the clock.
It's a good breakdown. It is interesting how people choose to approach this, because there are a lot of situations as the deck that has all the removal options where you say, okay, this is a board-centric deck. I just need to basically weather the storm. But we've seen you reach points where you only have so many dedicated sweeps, and we saw Taiwan kind of fumble the ball a little bit, thinking, okay, where do I actually commit this? Now, yes, getting the quest online is really powerful. That said, in the Shaman's defense, the Shaman hero power just actually allows them to be a little bit more resilient to the Ragnaros effect on a turn-to-turn basis. But look, over enough turns, that hero power is going to connect where it needs to connect to, which is just the hero portrait.
Their hero portrait.
Not yours. That would actually be a really bad hero power.
To be clear, yes, it would. And, you know, right off the bat, US has to be feeling good because, as we saw, Patches was drawn in the opening hand, which really lets them play a little bit more of that value game. Options: White Eyes, Earth Elemental, and Lord of the Arena. Basically, between Earth Elemental and White Eyes gives you that longevity of value, whereas Earth Elemental gives you that immediate punch.
I do like punch.
Me too.
And as we said, New Zealand in a dire spot, but you know, this is not the first situation they have found themselves where things are looking grim, and certainly not the first, you know, really skilled team they've had to go up against. Just looking over the list of people, or teams rather, New Zealand beat, that list includes Austria, Spain, Australia, Russia, Hungary, Brazil, Taiwan, and just last week, Canada. So they've certainly had their opportunities to face some of the best teams in the game, but this is going to require digging pretty deep if they're going to be able to pull this one out.
Oh yeah, this is definitely going to be tough because they have to win 3 games in a row in this match, including that ace match later on against the United States star Hearthstone stud Amnesiac.
Truly the Michael Jordan of Hearthstone.
The pinnacle of esports athletic ability.
The Wayne Gretzky of Hearthstone.
That's all we got.
I don't know anybody else who plays sports.
I wonder.
Yeah, so Pather trying to crowd the board and get something going, go into a juicy evolve turn, but Hot Meowth has actually had access to some pretty impactful early game taunts himself. So he's actually just winning the board right now, which is really what the Shaman does not want to see.
Slightly. But the one thing about the Taunt Warrior is with the quest, your taunts just are so annoying to get through. You try and like value trade and, you know, get through these minions while keeping some of your minions alive. And by the time you look up, the quest is almost done. The warrior's sweeping your board with Brawl or Sleep with the Fishes, and you're out of time because they just equip Soul Frost and start jamming 8 damage to your face. So a lot of times it may feel like even the warrior has a weaker board, but they manage to get through it, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, Taunt Warrior has completely overtaken Control Warriors. But Control Warrior does the same thing. It has additional removal, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't pack that punch behind it. So
Yeah, I mean, it has Ysera.
sometimes
That's cool. People like Ysera.
it's really good in fatigue. Has
There you
additional armor gain. Can afford to play N'Zoth.
I guess what I'm saying is play Taunt Warrior.
Yeah, it has just some of the same good matchups, but even more good matchups and less bad matchups.
I was actually very early on in this expansion on the boat of I'm just going to play Navi's Control Warrior list because I'm a rebel. I don't need the Ragnaros hero power. It was just strictly worse.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a problem for United States. They don't have any of those sweeping board clears. They're forced to be in a position where they're having to just play those taunts and hope that New Zealand doesn't draw the ways to get through it. But Bloodlust is in a spot where it's going to be hard for it to get better. Of course, you're not pushing too much of that damage through to the face, but you're really solidifying your lead on board, and you're getting through these pesky taunt minions.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder, the taunts are only going to be getting bigger and more annoying. Does the Bloodlust get more value later?
I mean, the Bloodlust, if you kind of have the read that your opponent doesn't have removal, the Bloodlust could get better next turn when you just win. But outside of that, no. And right now, if they just Jade Lightning, they don't push through much unless they sacrifice a lot of their board. Their only reload is Earth Elemental plus a 1/2 next turn, should a Brawl come out. And it looks like they're going to hedge against a Brawl. Well, I guess you need to trade in a minion anyway to make room for a Primal Fin Totem token.
Yep.
But I don't know, that's a pretty weak play for that turn.
Well, Slam allows you to use Sleep with the Fishes now to deal with the Primal Fin Totem.
Ooh,
I mean, you could always execute, I guess, but...
choice.
Nah, just kidding. It's more taunts.
Yeah,
It's just more taunts.
and I guess Bloodlust, this is the maximum amount of damage that's going to be. They could, again, just Jade Lightning, trade, and hope for a better Bloodlust, but you're giving them more time to draw into removal. This is one of the sort of pitfalls of keeping the quest is, even though you have that longevity and you have that sort of ticking time bomb of dealing 8 damage a turn. I was trying to find a subtle analogy, but I just went with 8 damage.
I mean, you know what? It's pretty late, Tej.
Yeah.
We're old.
Yeah, it's way past my bedtime. But I forget where I was going.
Words.
Yes, but you get one less card on the mulligan, so you're less likely to find the removal. Found it! And that's why you find those slightly higher win rates across a wide variety of players when throwing away the quest. But why a lot of pros are pretty outspoken about keeping the quest because they think that they can navigate a lot of matchups with less resources, and having the quest allows them to have that additional win condition that they can utilize better than the general population of higher tier Hearthstone players. But it is still an ongoing debate. You know, there was a lot of debate sparked last week when Taiwan played the deck and threw away the quest and ended up losing. But I think they lost for different reasons other than throwing away the quest.
Well, that is a clean, happy board for New Zealand, and another execute draw in there for United States is not what they want to see. Execute incredibly bad against this board. We saw Pathra kind of debating on voice comms with the rest of the New Zealand team. Yeah, do we feel like putting down the Bloodcell Corsair? There's no weapon here. Patches is already out of the deck. We don't have a second Bloodlust. Ultimately just chose to put it down there at the very end. Might potentially second or threaten, or at least give the idea that they're threatening a second Bloodlust.
It's a possibility, but it's pretty unlikely at this stage.
Right. It is just more damage per turn. I mean, that 1 damage adds up if it's not dealt with.
I mean, I think the United States has just got to be on the same game plan. Just keep throwing up taunts until you get to a point where you can start fishing for stuff. I think it's between Ally Armorsmith and Tar Creeper plus Hero Power. Tar Creeper, it has 2 less health, but you gain that 2 extra armor. Wow, an execute. Huh.
That is definitely something that I think as New Zealand, when you see it, you get some information about your opponent's hand. Oh, Flame Tongue Totem.
Wow. That really surprises me, actually. Maybe it's a matter of them trying to find a point where they can utilize Sleep with the Fishes better, but it doesn't seem like it makes sense to me because Sleep with the Fishes would have just gotten through the Stonehold Defender anyway.
Yeah, certainly something to ask about if we end up interviewing USA.
Yeah, they may not even remember it.
It is pretty late for them as well.
So Flame Tongue Totem allows them to push through. Jade Lightning allows them to push through. They could set the Earth Elemental. Well, they can try and go wild with the Brawl, the Evolve, considering United States has shown that they most likely do not have a Brawl, especially with the XQ, which is on the 1/3. That's almost a dead giveaway.
Right.
Because
yeah,
there would
that's
be
what I was talking
absolutely
about.
no reason to go for that.
I mean, if they did have Brawl, that is a deep mind game. And, I mean, USA does that. They do mind game, but that's... Oof. It's a hard one to believe.
Yeah. But this is a ton of pressure being put on by New Zealand, and that Bloodlust was able to get through those taunts on the board, and the United States is really struggling to find the removal that they need.
Our Fireworks is really good there.
Yeah.
You can actually just get rid of the Flame Tongue Totem without having to, like, slam execute it.
That would have been pretty bad.
Yeah.
My expert opinion says that would have not been an efficient use of resources.
On a 1 to 10 scale, you hold up a sign that says, no.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this turn, or this mana now in the Fiery War Axe, they can play the Axe, then play the Ally Armorsmith, so getting rid of the Flame Tongue Totem certainly makes the board a little bit less scary. Now, I wonder, last turn for New Zealand, you had the opportunity to play the Earth Elemental, and if you did truly make the read that the Brawl wasn't there, you'd already seen 1 execute. I think I kind of liked the Earth Elemental there, potentially. Only because of the execute onto the Stonehill.
Yeah, you see an execute gone, you have a slight inclination that Brawl is not in the hand because of the way the United States has played. I wouldn't have mind that also, but there is part of me that says you want that to be able to have the reload. Now, double Evolve. They're going to have to go for some Evolve play soon, or they're going to have to run out of resources just trying to get stuff through. Jade Lightning with Spell Power allows them to just trade over 2 more 1/1s. But then they can't play Earth Elemental. And there's another turn where they're giving the United States to try and find additional resources to be able to come back in the game.
Right, and realistically in this matchup, when you actually bring the warrior down to a few cards, that's really the time you kind of have to strike and just say, okay, I'm just going to make you have it. And up until this point, whenever you've put them in check on turns, it just doesn't seem like they've had anything near what they need to have.
Strongest play they can make, and it is a pretty strong one, taking away the charge of the Fiery War Axe and pushing through while giving a limited amount of armor. But the United States is a sweeper, a board sweeper away from having a lot of game this match. I think Evolve is definitely warranted here.
Let's see what they... Oh my goodness.
Alarmobot.
Oh my goodness, there's the brawl off the top.
Oh no. New Zealand is probably going to slowly see their hopes stripping away. I don't even know what the best minion to come out from this is. Rockpool Hunter has the most stats out of all of the minions on board.
There's also the 5-1. The 5-1 could have survived.
5-1 could have survived, yeah, but it gets swept up by a whirlwind effect or something along those lines. I mean, in that situation, almost every outcome is bad. I guess Alarmobot surviving pulls you out an Earth Elemental for free the next turn. But the way Alarmobot works, it happens at the beginning of your turn, so you don't get to attack with the minion.
Okay, eye off the top is...
Wow, that's great.
That is exactly what you want to see. So, both teams are starting to see needing kind of critical draws to stay in the match, and they're both getting them.
Yeah, I mean, they're Jades. They've already used 2 Jade cards, I believe, so I think it's a 3-3. It is, and they can continue to go wide and hold the Earth Elemental for sort of that, last push. Another Brawl drawn, but I don't know if
this one's not, this one I don't think.
This one's not really that good. So let's do the math. They have 8, 9, 10 damage on board. Bloodlust would be an extra 12, so it'd be 22. They would die to a Bloodlust. So they can, they know that their first card in New Zealand's hand is still that Stonehill Defender card. And they know the second card is one that's been picked up relatively recently in the past 3 turns if they're doing a good job of hand tracking. So
that is an interesting point, because what do you think came off Stonehill Defender that hasn't been played yet?
Could be anything. They could just not want to be committing something big into the brawl.
Sure.
I think the most likely is Alakir.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think I think Alakir, because there was the turn where they had 5 mana, they just hero powered and didn't play it.
And the turn that they Flametongue Totemed, they did have 8 mana, I believe. Or no, they had 7 mana, so that wouldn't have been able to be played anyway. I mean, with this many resources left in the hand.
Okay, this is a pretty good outcome here.
No, that's the worst.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because this leaves the absolute most power on the board.
Well, I mean, it's a good outcome for New Zealand.
Okay, yeah.
All right, well, we've seen both brawls. I think it's just time to rip the Earth Elemental. Just go.
Rip it good.
Crack that rip.
The United States is actually pretty close to being able to complete the quest. They're at 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 7. Oh, well, that's a full board sweep right there. Ravaging Ghoul, Slam. Oh, no, that doesn't quite do it, but they can use Execute. Doesn't matter at that stage. And clearing board at any stage in the game against Evolved Shaman is something that you always take the advantage of.
All right, New Zealand really wants to see Doppelgangster just right now.
It would be key, and they're seeing their tournament hopes and their live finals hopes come down to a few key draws in their deck. Flametongue Totem is not one of them, but the one thing that they can take solace in the fact is that United States has not completed the quest. They're not on the clock. They're still at 30 health. But if Evolved Shaman loses control of the board, it is incredibly difficult for them to gain it back, especially if the U.S. draws taunts. Blood of Brave, that's a taunt. I think this is going to put him at 6 out of 7, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, that completes it. That's a big deal. Now that clock is started. New Zealand is going to die. I think you forgo the armor up, equip this bad boy, and point that 8 damage at the face.
Well, I mean, you don't get to point it.
You press the button, and then you'll simply go to the face.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, there is still a chance.
Okay.
This has to be big though.
This just became a game. I don't know. Totem up before is a little bit interesting, but I guess you're going all in at this point.
Yeah,
you say
doesn't exist. Doomsayer doesn't exist.
Pyros.
Okay,
that's a great outcome.
This is big.
From all of the evolves. The beast is just a big beast. Yeah, it has a downside, but Sunkeeper's great because of the Divine Shield. Mukla, Tyrant of the Veil, I mean, just reasonable stats. And then Pyros is one of the best 2-drops when you're in a value game. It's actually the best 2-drop in a value game. That is incredibly huge for New Zealand. The landscape of this game changed so quickly.
Yeah, they're looking at putting the Flame Tongue Totem here between the Sunwalker. It's really just important it gets on the Sunwalker.
Yeah. I mean, both brawls are gone. Sleep with the Fish is gone.
All right, Curator's good. Curator gets you resources, but isn't going to be enough at this point in the game.
Because you kind of want to slam that Sunwalker.
What now?
To draw a card and to take off the Divine Shield.
Yeah, Curator does not fit into a situation where you're going to be able to use the hero power with it as well, so I think it's just really important to slam that Sunwalker. Sunwalker slammed. What do we get? All right, Sleep with the Fishes. That is a dead draw.
Yeah. I mean, the United States needs some perfect hits here. They need to hit, I think, exactly Sunwalker. And then trade over Flamestone Totem with Ravaging Ghoul, trade over the Pyros with the 2/6.
What now?
I mean, I guess this sort of accomplishes the same thing. Yeah, this is pretty smart. I like this outside, you know, instead of pushing the chance that you draw another sweeper. Ugh. They're really hoping to hit the beast there. 4 damage needed. There's no Jade Lightnings left. There is Jade Claws. There's a Bloodlust that wouldn't have been quite close enough. But man, New Zealand's getting very close, and it looked grim for them. They needed Doppelgangster on that one turn. If they didn't get it, they probably lost the game.
There is no probably. There was just how'd they ever get back into it? They needed a card that made 3 minions that made 6 drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Pyros is doing some work already. That's a 6/6. Next turn, if that gets hit by the hero power, it's going to be a 10/10. And New Zealand wisely going wide on the board.
Get that extra 1 damage. That is a Stone Tusk board. Just get them.
Yeah, and I don't know if the United States even has cards that's going to survive through a devolve. They don't have Brawls left. They don't have Sleep with the Fishes left. They could draw like a Ravaging Ghoul and then hit the Beast. And then Armorsmith to gain armor to try and get out of range of Pyros, but even that wouldn't have been enough. And it looks like that's most likely going to be game, unless Devolve gets like a Sunwalker. Or another 6-mana taunt.
An important note, if they whiff, they can't play Pyros.
If they play Mana Tide Totem. I mean, there's some taunts from 6 mana, but not many. It's like an 1/8 of them.
No,
they get
that's
Frozen
not gonna do
Crusher, and we're going to at least a game number 4 in New Zealand with a pretty immense comeback in that game.
Yeah, United States, like so many before them, just not happy to see Frozen Crusher signals the end of the game. And yeah, don't call it a comeback just yet, but Pather's excited. You know, New Zealand has life now. They could turn this around.
They could turn it around, and I was, you know, I stood up. I was sitting down on my chair, and I stood up because I thought that game was over.
Look at our secrets. We stand up the whole time. He's just really short. I'm very tall.
Yeah, we do stand up the whole time. That's a fact. But yeah, I thought it seemed like it was over at that one stage, and
yeah,
Doppelgangers came off the top at the perfect time.
I was gonna say there was a lot of trading back and forth. Both teams kind of getting exactly what they needed from the deck, so there was very even and back and forth. And honestly, I thought the Doppelgangster might have come a turn too late. You know, we saw that hero power come online. The 2 minions on the board, it just looked bad, but able to pull it out. Now there's going to be Ting Tong on the Druid versus the 2014 world champion himself, Firebat, on the Shaman. Again, we've kind of talked about what both archetypes are, so instead I want to talk a little bit about the players. Ting Tong, like a lot of the New Zealand roster, came in here a bit of an unknown. We've had a chance to interview him now a couple of times. He's a very accomplished aggro player, and he's someone who hasn't necessarily changed it up on a week-to-week basis. He's generally just on that Smork life,
Yeah.
and it serves him well. Whereas Firebat, we've seen Firebat seems to go through phases where, a lot of times he's casting, a lot of times he's competing, sometimes he's deck doctoring. We see his work now with Omni just recently, but regardless of what he's doing, Firebat has one of the highest game IQs in North America.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just absolutely terrifying to face off against.
He also has a pretty unique style when it comes to Hearthstone. If you watched Hearthstone back in the day when he won his world championship, was very evident. He just has an aggressive mindset. He's all about, asking tough questions to your opponent when it comes to your board state and like hoping that they don't have, the answer for it, or, assuming that they don't. He's definitely a guy that taught a lot of people that hitting that face is usually the place. And, I say that, and ironically, but that really is sort of his play style. And it's one that definitely earned him some respect from a lot of people that played back in the day, and a lot of people that were in the community that saw him win a world championship and actually said, wow, this guy sort of, changed the way that a lot of people play Hearthstone.
Right, and to really kind of go in that a little bit further, it's not even, obviously the Smork meme is a great one of my favorites, but the play style wherein you're not just sitting there forever playing around what your opponent could have. It's the approach of make them have it every single turn, and that is something that Firebat has really perfected. And, if you have the chance to watch his matches, it's a recurring theme with him. It's never anything where he really backs off and plays super cautious. He just always makes you have an answer to whether it's lethal damage, a board state, whatever.
If you get a chance to dig it up, you should go back and watch Firebat's run through the 2014 World Championship and see the types of plays that other players were making and see the types of plays that he's making.
There's actually, specifically, I went back and saw this, watch Kalento's matches versus Firebat's. It's absolutely like night and day, the styles. But we're going to hop into it here, and Ting Tong, unsurprisingly, on that aggro Druid, Firebat on the Bloodlust Shaman. So, it's worth pointing out that when the chips really mattered, round of 8 here, teams were, at least when it came to Shaman, sticking with what they knew. We're not seeing people try to necessarily experiment that much, and I totally understand. Single elimination setting, you're one series win away from a live finals.
Yeah, and this matchup is, I feel like it's pretty swingy one way or the other, with usually Token Shaman or Evolved Shaman coming out on top because of their ability to deal with the early game from these aggressive decks. They have a lot of early game minions. They have Jade Claws. They have Maelstrom Portal. And all of those things, really allow you to tear through early boards. And that's not a fantastic early hand for New Zealand. They have Innervate, but they don't have any power plays to make with the Innervate.
We see Ting Tong. Ting Tong just, he's talking it over his team. He's thinking it over, but he is visibly stressed. And whenever we've talked to Ting Tong, he is a very emotional individual.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at that hand. That is the best anti-aggro hand you could possibly ask for. You have the coin Jade Claws, which puts something on the board and deals with your opponent's minion. You have a 1-drop to follow it up. The only better that could have been if it was the Bloodcell Corsair to be able to pull out the patches as well. And you also have Maelstrom Portal. Plus Flame to Totem, almost the perfect start that you could ask for when playing against an aggressive deck as a Token Shaman. Actually, no, you actually would want it to be a Firefly in this case because you're staring at a Galaka Crawler on the other side. So there you go.
Also, Firebat is someone who is not afraid to try to rattle his opponents a little bit. And if he studied the VODs, which I know Firebat has, Ting Tong is, like I was saying, a little bit of an emotional, stressful player.
Yeah.
So just immediately hits the emote, coins out the Jade Claws. I'm Firebat. I'm the 2014 World Champion. And if you want your team to still be in this, you actually have to beat me.
Yeah.
I really like it. Firebat is one of those players who, utilizes small edges to get there. And wow, that Galaka Crawler just comes out.
I mean, this is actually a pretty strong play. They get to destroy the Jade Claws with the Bloodcell Corsair. They get to value trade over the Firefly with this, but they are sort of all in on this play. And, see how Firebat wants to deal with this. Maelstrom Portal plus Flame Elemental is a benefit, but once you get through that board, as long as you dodge the Bittertide Hydra, as long as you dodge the Living Mana, you're home free from that point.
And even then, if you run into those, you have an answer in the form of Devolve if you can get your hands on it. Devolve in general against this style of Druid is just so powerful.
Yeah. But, I mean, New Zealand did have a great pickup. If they didn't pick up a buff, they would have been in a lot of trouble. I mean, it's okay. Wow, Mark of Yashraj as well. This is an incredible series of draws for New Zealand. Especially considering that now puts this minion out of Jade Lightning range.
Yeah, certainly going up into the Shaman's turn 4, there is one card on your mind for as long as it's been available, and that is Jade Lightning.
There's a possibility for a pivot with Stonehill Defender, but you're playing off curve for essentially the rest of the game, if that's the case. Man, this got real awkward real quick. New Zealand picked up some key draws, and U.S. just sort of drew dead with their last couple, so.
Like, full on, you get up to your prom date's house, forgot the corsage. Awkward.
Oh, I thought you were going to say forgot the croissant. And I was going to say,
Is that
now
what you
we're
brought to
speaking
your-
my language.
Is that what you brought to your prom date?
I'm sure there's someone out there who misunderstood and was like, did you bring a corsage? And they were like, they understood that as croissant, and they, you know, went out and bought a croissant and brought that to their prom date. But alas, even though it would seem like the case that it would be me, I did not find myself in such a predicament.
I'm glad, TJ. I only wish the best for you, but we see their Tar Creeper come down. Hero Power allows for New Zealand to fully tidy up the board, so the double Savage Roar, suddenly not as awkward as it looked before, because it looks like they're going to get to keep the board if they don't push the face damage here. And in this situation, I think with double Savage Roar, given how important the board is, I think you absolutely do everything you can to, on this next turn, protect your board.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
This is Whiff City.
From a great early hand to a very poor mid-game and next early draws here.
Dirty Rat.
If they have the read that they rip Dirty Rat and it's just a couple spells and they're going to do it and no minion, nothing.
Firebat just got him.
Yeah, I mean, Savage Roar is going to let them push through this pretty easily, but the one thing about it, oh yeah, this is a, there is no subtlety in this play. Ting Tong, have no shame. Just go ahead and rip them both.
He's thinking about it. He's like,
What to do?
is this truly the way I want to go?
Yes. Actually, you got to do the math. There's a possibility that Savage Roar actually ends up being more efficient. If you double Savage Roar, your face goes into Stonehill Defender, your 2-1, which is now a 6-1, goes into the Dirty Rat, and you push 9 plus 5, which is 14. Now, Power of the Wild seems much better. Then you can put the Bloodsoak Corsair into the Stonehill Defender, and you can put your face plus the 2/6 into the Dirty Rat. And then have Savage Roar next turn to
Hit really hard.
push for a lot of damage. Is there a next turn lethal set up with just Savage Roar?
Oh my goodness.
It will have 5 plus 6, 11 plus 8. Yeah, that's 19 damage.
There is no taunt in the hand for Firebat. Now, Jade Lightning would at least allow them to deal with the
All
Tar
right.
Creeper, but
We're going to a game 5.
Ting Tong, fist bump in the air. This is it. New Zealand on the brink now. Firebat just goes, well, they had it.
Yep.
Yeah, Firebat realized they could Jade Lightning to get rid of one of the minions, but just wanted to put the... Oh, my goodness. The grown man thanks from Ting Tong.
And Firebat knows. Firebat does not throw out those emotes with the intention of, I can't take him back.
Yeah.
Firebat, when he throws out that shade, he's expecting it to be thrown back if things don't go his way. So
what a fantastic feeling for Ting Tong, though. You see your opening hand, things are looking kind of grim, and then you manage to work it out after the emote, after the coin Jade clause in. You're just like, thanks.
Yes, my thanks to you. But, man, this is... After being down 2-0, I thought New Zealand, oh, man, they're out.
Yeah.
It looked like they were going to lose that and get that Warrior game, get 3-0'd, and just have such a disappointing end to what was an incredible season from them. But I think it's only fitting now that we come down to the ace match of the very last match
Of the round of 8, yeah.
of the round of 8, the very last online broadcast portion match for the Hearthstone Global Games before we go to the live finals.
And it's going to be the Mage Mirror Amnesiac Slayer Max. This is the moment you live for as Amnesiac. You constantly talk about how you are the clutch player. You are one of the best players in the world, arguably the best player in North America. You want the rock right now.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what archetypes these players bring, because we've seen New Zealand go for a bunch of different styles across their play throughout the global games. But Amnesiac in the U.S. Have not really gone for too much of different styles. They've gone for those lean Bird Mage decks. I have a feeling that we might see Freeze Mage from them because, a lot of the America scene right now, Freeze Mage is sort of dominating the ladder meta at the moment. The sort of little bit of a hybrid Freeze Mage with Mana Worms and Firelands Portals. But generally the full Freeze Mage package beyond that. The deck that we saw Canada play, Purple play for Canada in their loss against New Zealand. Lost against New Zealand last week, so that's what I can guess, but it's anybody's guess at this point, because I have no idea.
Mage is so flexible at this point that it's really difficult to just try to pinpoint and say this is just hands down the best Mage deck you could be playing right now, but as I said, Amnesiac's someone who, if you ever talk to him, if you ever get the opportunity to hang around him, he's a super cool guy, super intelligent, but he thrives on high-pressure moments. And Slayer Max, we've seen a little bit more, he gets stressed out, right? It doesn't necessarily look like he's always comfortable in these moments, so it's going to be interesting to see how he performs in a match that, as you said, is so pivotal. This is it. Yeah. This is New Zealand. This is USA. Winner of this advances to the top 4.
For both these teams, it all comes down to this. No more cheeseburgers.
No, it's snack time's over.
Snack time is over.
The only thing you want to be dining on is your opponent's blood at this point. We're going to have to boost up this game's maturity rating. Rated M.
Amnesiac can't even watch these matches.
Well, I think his mom's in the room.
Yeah,
that's how it works. But yeah, we see there pretty standard stuff there from the opening Mage hands. This is exactly what you kind of expect to see in most of the Mage decks right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Acolyte of Pain. Oh my goodness, TJ. I think this is just a full-on Freeze Mage mirror.
It is.
All right, well, I'm going to go because I'm not of any use here. Good luck with the cast, man.
Well, Freeze Mage mirrors are one of the more straightforward of the Freeze Mage matchups. Because it basically comes down to who pieces together enough damage to kill their opponent first. There's some intricacies with Alexstrasza. Do you use Alexstrasza offensively? Do you use Alexstrasza defensively? Do you jam it on 9? Do you wait a little bit? It all depends on how you're feeling out the course of the match.
I'm gonna go look up George C tweets and just read them as they feel applicable.
About Freeze Mage?
Yeah.
Just search George C. Freeze Mage and see what he has to say.
I'm going to pull up laughing on the phone.
George C., the Amnesiac of the UK.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. One of them made it to the round of 8. But... Ooh.
Yeah, but this is going to be a pretty close matchup. Both teams have card draw, a lot of card draw in their early hand. New Zealand with just a little bit more. New Zealand has Flame Strike in the deck, which is a pretty useless card in this matchup in particular. We still don't know for sure what the decks are, but seeing Frost Nova and Acolyte of Pain lends us to believe that this is some type of Freeze Mage, whether it's the pure kind or whether it's that little bit of a hybrid with Mana Worm. Also, Amnesiac has Volcanic Potion, which is not always found in Freeze Mage, but is definitely a common choice if you're planning on facing a little bit of aggro. So both teams here with definitely similar decks, but looks like different choices as far as like board sweeps go. And wow, Mishak in the US just deciding to play out Medivh's Valet. I think if they just to contest things on the board, I don't know how valuable that is in that matchup. Recurring damage is good, but getting like, 4, maybe 6 damage over the course of 2 to 3 turns, I don't know how valuable that is over the course of having on-demand 3 damage later in the game when it matters more.
Yeah, I was going to say the real premium to me is the fact that it's damage that you just do from hand, right? It doesn't require anything on the board. And a lot of times against freeze mages, you run into situations where damage from the board is just not something you can accomplish. All right, there's the Acolyte of Pain now. A lot of times you'll see players just hold the Acolyte of Pain until they feel like they can start pinging it themselves. But yep, USA just jamming it out now. They see a 2-attack minion on the board. They feel confident they're going to get at least 2 draws off of it.
Well, right now I'd say New Zealand has a significant advantage because they have Alex Strauss in their hand and the United States doesn't.
Let the pain speak to me.
Just throw out your Acolytes, everybody.
Yeah, but that could change if United States does draw their Alex Strauss as well.
So I was looking at George C's Twitter for words of wisdom, didn't find it. I did see somebody...
Surprise, surprise!
Somebody yelled at me about not knowing what Beyblades is. I'm sorry, guy. I missed the bus on that one.
I told you, it's like fidget spinners, but you throw them on the ground and they battle each other.
Gosh, what a time to be alive. I see Amnesiac just head in his hands, just, goodness, there's Acolytes on the board. What is the correct play here? I'm on 4 mana. None of my plays from hand seem super intuitive.
It's almost 3 a.m.
Yeah, just go ahead and get that draw first. See what you get from your deck.
Runs out on me.
All right, Primordial Glyph. I mean, there is potential for you to put your 2/3 into the 2/3 after checking the glyph, use the hero power to ping it off, if you think that's something you want to do. But yeah, it didn't necessarily seem very strong in the face of just ensuring your opponent only gets 2 draws off their Acolyte.
Yeah, they could have forced an overdraw if they had not played the ice block and instead pinged their opponent's Acolyte.
Yeah, what did they really give up if they did that? I mean, I guess developing the ice block is always a big deal.
Especially with Medivh's Valet in hand, and especially with how much card draw they have. It's actually a situation that you can get in when you're playing Freeze Mages. You have an overabundance of resources, and you can't get cards out of your hand fast enough to be able to play more card draw. So you end up playing cards inefficiently, or you end up having to sacrifice burn cards, or you end up not being able to play cards at all, like Acolyte of Pain, because of the risk of burning more cards. So I like getting the ice block out of hand, and that's going to be an ice barrier from New Zealand and Slayer Max, I believe.
Yes, it was an ice barrier.
But I'd say both teams drawing reasonably well. They're not getting too many secrets. New Zealand, I still think, because of the fact that they have Alex Strauss in their hand already, has a little bit of an advantage, but United States has plenty of time to pick up theirs. It is just that important of a card in this matchup.
Yeah, back before set rotation, we would see Reno Mage was kind of the popular thing at the time, and Reno radically shifted, I think, how these matchups went, but with Reno gone, and you essentially just have Alex Strauss as a defensive tool for HP. Yeah, to your point, it's a super important tool just to have, and again, because of the fact that it's something you only run 1 copy of, there is just a very real and unfortunate world where maybe that's just 30th card. So getting it early, it just takes a lot of weight off your mind.
Sure. Yeah. Something to note, something really simple, but definitely does matter. United States last turn, they're sequencing, playing the Arcanologist before they play Arcane Intellect to pull the secret out of the deck before they draw cards. Just increases the quality of their draws because you don't want to draw a secret at that point. It's definitely a small thing, but things that, I know players forget about at times.
It's a small thing, but it's also, I feel like a lot of the nuance of Freeze Mage is actually predicated on the small things adding up. Oftentimes more so than say, other decks where there's 1 or 2 tricks of the trade you learn. I think with Freeze Mage, there's just so many different things that you learn, and that's why, we praise players in our community who are masters of the deck. So there was the option there just to get the Valet out to deal with the recurring 2 damage. The 2 chip damage is actually extremely important in this matchup.
But they have an Ice Barrier up.
Yeah. So they're gaining HP, but...
Well, a lot of times in Freeze Mage, if there's multiple secrets up, or if you even have a slight inclination that it might be Ice Barrier, you don't attack. Because the likelihood that you deal 8 damage with minions...
Right. It's not great.
Is very low. So I can imagine that seeing 2 secrets up and both being natural secrets,
okay.
the United States won't even bother to attack. So there's almost no point in using Medivh's Valet on this minion. Because
when you could have burn damage later.
When you could have burn damage later, and when that 2/3 is really not threatening you at all. So I do like that. It also fits the mana better, you know. And this is just going to be the US effectively sacrificing a Volcanic Potion just to get cards out of their hands so they can draw more cards.
Yeah, this is a version of the Freeze Mage list, which, as you said, is a little bit heavier on the removal. We see the double Doomsayer potentially in there. We at least see the 1. The Volcanic Potion's in there as well. So they are going to run into things that are just strictly less effective, generally speaking, than they would be in other matchups.
Yeah. And, you know, it may seem weird that they spent the Volcanic Potion that turn when playing Loot Hoarder, even if they hadn't played the Volcanic Potion, would not have risked an overdraw. But what it does do is it gets that 3 mana and that extra spell out of the way before they get into a situation where they want to expend more mana, but can't because they're limited by how many cards they have in their hand because they didn't play the Volcanic Potion. So definitely a strong play, even though it seems weird. I think that it's necessary for them to be able to have the hand space to be able to make the plays that they want moving forward in the next couple turns.
Yeah, it goes back to the point I was making earlier, which is with this style of deck, there are just so many little things that add up in terms of how you approach your turns.
Yeah. New Zealand has very awkward turns.
They do, but they're also looking at, you know, having just a bunch of damage plus Alexstrasza in hand. So it's more kind of, you know, how do you make sure you don't overdraw cards? What do you actually commit?
Yeah.
Because we see there the Fireball, we see the Valet, we see the Pyroblast in addition to the Alexstrasza. So at least in theory, you have enough damage to close out the game.
Another Arcane Intellect. They're going to have to throw away a card here. Probably Frost Nova. They could also Primordial Glyph and then Doomsayer, but I don't know if they know what they need with Primordial Glyph just yet. And Frost Nova does not have too much value. Its value really comes only in the form of being able to block Alexstrasza from attacking for a turn. But that's a very fringe case scenario. So just a Frost Nova is going to be expended. And this is about as you'd expect Freeze Mage to go. As they're both drawing cards, and Alexstrasza picked up for both. And now, since the United States has more burn, plus second Ice Block already in hand, I like their hand better.
Okay.
Amazing how fast that changes. And
You know,
amazing how much it predicates upon drawing Alexstrasza.
We really need a ticker at the bottom that updates people when you like someone's hands better. TJ now likes New Zealand's hand.
It's a sliding scale.
Just TJ in a different colored shirt. Well, no, it's red, white, and blue for both flags. Oh, no.
Oh, no. And they're both playing Mage. See, this turn is really difficult because they either draw cards or deal damage, and they don't want to do either of those now. This may be a Flame Strike pass turn. If they play the Arcane Intellect, they're going to need to effectively throw away the Medivh's Valet. Or hope that they pick up something, another thing that they can throw away.
How's that Frost Nova?
Yeah, and Medivh's Valet is thrown out onto the board. I mean, damage is relevant at this stage because we're starting to get to the point where Alexstrasza comes out, and if your opponent plays a defensive Alexstrasza, you can put them on a clock because you know that there's nothing that they can do once you pop those blocks.
I mean, you've seen your opponent has drawn all the way to 11 cards in their deck.
Yeah.
So odds are starting to feel like Alexstrasza is probably in there. Worth noting, they get to 9 before you do. So maybe you may just start making the read of, okay, I can't just sit around and wait for Alexstrasza to be the play. I just have to start going.
Yeah.
They have a fair amount of burn in hand.
Both sides do. Play that jumps out at me right away is just Blizzard plus ping.
Yeah. Well, I think they're still on the play where they're just trying to dump the maximum amount of cards, so I don't dislike Doomsayer here.
Yeah.
The ping would have gotten another damage in.
Doomsayer does sort of make it so that if they're playing Alexstrasza next turn, they're playing Alexstrasza on an empty board, guaranteed. Not that there would be anything that you could play that could contest in Alexstrasza. An Acolyte of Pain, perhaps, they could play, but it does sort of ensure the best possible situation going into turn 9, and it does get a card out of their hand, so if they do want to draw cards, then they can. But at this stage, I mean, they've been through an Acolyte, they've been through both.
Yeah.
Arcane Intellects.
United States is now basically at the point where they're done digging. They don't need to find more.
Well, they still need to find more. Potentially. Again, there gets to be those weird situations that if you play Alexstrasza first, your opponent has to make that conscious decision where can we actually kill our opponents by Alexstrasing them? Or do we have to play this weird attrition game where we try and remove their stuff and be really reserved with our burn and then Alexstrasza ourselves and then try and win the game fully from there?
Well, more what I'm saying is that when they look at their hand, the toolkit, you think, okay, what do I need to close out the game?
Yeah.
You are seeing a
Eater of
my
Secrets!
Goodness!
That changes everything.
Oh my goodness, that is
The sliding bar for which hand I like better is overflowing onto the side of the United States.
We pulled one TJ, and 100% of TJs really think USA has a great hand.
Yes, that poll
Accurate.
is 100% accurate as I can verify because I am the only person a part of it. Wow. I wonder if New Zealand has Eater of Secrets in their deck as well, but...
So it's worth noting that a lot of the community tends to look to nowadays, as I was mentioning George C earlier, for lists. And, you know, Eater of Secrets has not always been a popular choice to have in your deck. But George C, at least in this meta, kind of broke open the dam to the greater community. It was like, no, Eater of Secrets is good. You can run it. There's so much Mage running around. I would not be surprised if New Zealand is running it, but there is certainly still a very pervasive school of thought that thinks, you know what? Don't run Eater of Secrets, just be better than your opponent.
Yeah, and it's such a hard card to play around because as soon as it's played, you effectively lose. So you can never like make the read or hope they don't have it. You kind of have to play the game assuming they don't have it.
Goodness, that is going to be game.
Well, there's still the Ice Barrier. Oh, no, there's no... Yeah, the Ice Barrier goes away with the Eater of Secrets. That is game. Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, no. All of their hopes gone because of the Eater of Secrets. That is insane. The tech choice from the United States coming out and giving them the win. Wow.
Yeah, you see a Slayer Max just go, wow.
Yeah.
Tech choices matter, and that is a tech choice where they wanted to target Mage, and it did exactly that. Now, I want to point out, we were talking about quality of hands even going into that. USA looked like they were in a good position, but hey, let's just skip the 4 to 5 turns of extra stuff, and let's just Eater of Secrets.
Yeah. That's crazy. That is insane. And, you know, I'd like to see if New Zealand had one as well, to see if there would have been that battle. But it wasn't even something that played into my head because, you know, a lot of the lists that I've been seeing outside of last season, since Mage is becoming less popular on ladder, don't have the Eater of Secrets in it.
Right. There was like a 2-week period where it felt like every single Burn Mage deck, the, you know, the Medivh, Pyroblast, was running that Eater of Secrets because there were just so many mages.
Yeah, and if you're playing Alexstrasza first in that matchup and you have Eater of Secrets, it's very hard to lose. As you can see there, I had the Ice Barrier in my mind of like, oh, yeah, if they attack, he gains 8 armor. Doesn't even matter. Nope. And New Zealand made the conscious decision, the one that I talked about, where if your opponent plays Alexstrasza, you have to sort of calculate that in your head. Can I actually win if I also offensively Alexstrasza? And they said that's going to be the game plan. Didn't take into account Eater of Secrets, or did take it into account and realized that they couldn't beat it and went for it anyway. And a crazy end to what was a pretty grueling game.
Pretty grueling series overall for New Zealand and USA. Let's go ahead and take a look at the final score. It all came down to the ace match there. Slayer Max taking on Amnesiac, and Amnesiac won both tilts against Slayer Max there. But I really just want to say before we get into congratulating USA, what a season for New Zealand. You know, they came in here, as we said, this was not really even a team people were looking at as being the best team just in the Australia-New Zealand region. But they came in, they played really well, and I know just talking to the players, the foundations of the season were a little bit shaky.
Yeah.
The players didn't necessarily know a bunch about each other. They were not a cohesive unit, but they really grew together over the course of the Hearthstone Global Games, and you know, it put up great results. They did not lose a game from May 4th until now, so hats off to them. But let's go ahead and take a moment to talk to Amnesiac now. Amnesiac, congratulations on the win. What time is it over there?
It's like 3 in the morning, Rob. I'm not gonna lie, I'm in pretty rough shape.
We saw you munching on some burgers to make it work. Was that 2 or 3?
Munching is an understatement. You killed those burgers.
I only had the one, actually. Yeah, my sister, we got in at like 1, and she was like, "Do you need food?" And I was like, "Yeah, can you get me a burger and fries?" She came back, she clutched up super hard. She got me like a shake, burger, fries. I think she was the MVP of the series, to be honest.
Yeah, nice going, Sister Amnesiac, making it work. So, you know, coming into this, obviously, I know you guys all pretty well, and you were all fairly confident that you guys were going to make it to top 4. But now that you guys have actually secured that spot, you know, what was the journey like?
Well, the first group stage went really well. Obviously, we won our first 4. We were through pretty easily. I'd say this match was probably our closest call, because in our top 16 match, we kind of just steamrolled the other people. But we were feeling really good. Like, game 1 of the series I felt really confident in all of our decisions. And, like, I was piloting, and I felt really good about a lot of the things we did. And we got there at the end, even though I think our draw was, like, slightly unfavorable. But we just, like, made good decisions and knew when to push and when not to, which was really nice. We all thought we were going to just sweep 3-0. We thought we were going to win game 3, and then they ripped Doppel, and we were like, oh, that's not great. And we kind of lost. We're like, okay, we'll bring it back. And then game 4, we also thought we were going to win, because we're like, oh, our hand's insane. This is, like, exactly what you want. And then they kind of just, like, did some stuff. We died, and we are like, okay, it's fine. And then that game, our hand was really strong. I mean, I've played that matchup a ton. I've played a ton of Mage. I knew exactly what to do. But the execution was pretty straightforward in game 5.
And the Eater of Secrets, man. It really surprised me because, you know, in ladder nowadays, we don't really see much of it because Mage is sort of fallen out. But definitely went pretty nuts for that one. But looking forward to the live finals. We're seeing a lot of powerhouse teams now. Part 1, are you surprised to see powerhouse teams after, you know, this many grueling phases of global games? And 2, how do you feel about the competition currently at the live finals with Ukraine, Czech Republic, and South Korea competing?
I mean, I don't really know about powerhouse. It's like I'm up here, and the USA's up here, and then like they're so far down that I just can't see them from my perch. I don't even know what you're talking about.
They're powerhouses, and you're a power skyscraper.
So obviously you feel zero fear, or well, I wouldn't even say fear, but you're not intimidated at all by any of these teams.
No, I mean,
including the Czech Republic, which did beat USA.
Yeah. They did. I mean, there were some draws that occurred. I'm not gonna get into it. I look forward to playing the Czech Republic. It's impressive that they were able to top 4 for sure. It'll be a good match.
And destroy those teams like he destroyed that cheeseburger.
All right, dude. Well, we'll let you go. We know it's late over there. Thanks for talking to us. Anything you want to say to all the fans from USA who stayed up late to watch?
Yeah, it really does mean a lot to all of us. Like, this is a super long qualification process. We're all really happy to have made it. And I know I'm usually the one doing the interviews, but all of us really do appreciate everyone who watches and supports the team. And we just hope that we can keep it up and do the U.S. proud in Germany.
All right, man. Thanks for your time. Go get some rest.
Thanks.
All right, so from atop his perch, way above the other teams, Amnesiac felt they had it the whole time.
Germany? What's he doing in Germany?
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
But well done by the United States. Well done. And again, you know, I mentioned in the interview, Amnesiac didn't seem to agree with me, but powerhouse countries in the live finals for the top 4.
All right, let's go ahead and
Powerhouses and a power skyscraper.
We'll go ahead and take a look at the bracket now as we have all 4 teams that will be attending. China versus Czech Republic. No problem. Czech Republic makes it through. United States versus New Zealand, we just saw. What a season for New Zealand, but the United States ultimately wins out, advances. Mexico versus South Korea, we saw it tonight. South Korea able to take that one fairly easily. Again, shout out to Mexico for a great season. Ukraine versus Netherlands. Ukraine emerges, hard fought. Netherlands a worthy opponent, but we now have our 4 teams going to the live finals.
Ukraine, South Korea, Czech Republic, and the United States. To reiterate from what we were talking about at the beginning of the broadcast, if you had sort of picked, you know, like the top 8 countries that you'd see contending for best countries in Hearthstone, all 4 of these were in the conversation. And I think if you ask a lot of people, especially in the competitive Hearthstone community, to hand pick out the best countries, they may pick out the majority of these as far as their 4. So, I'm sort of blown away by the outcome of the season. I like the underdog stories, and I was, kind of slightly rooting for Mexico and New Zealand because of that fact. But it also is really cool to see the consistency of good play in Hearthstone.
Yeah, I think that's worth touching on just really quickly. When you think about how long this tournament series was up until this point, the consistency was the name of the game, right? It was the teams that were performing consistently. It was the teams who practiced the matchups, brought the deck lists, knew how to approach the format. Those are the teams that did well, and those are the 4 teams we're going to see representing all of the global stage at the live finals. So, I think it's been a great season thus far. Can't wait to see what happens at the live finals. But guys, for all of us here at the ESL studios in Burbank, California, it's been an absolute pleasure bringing you the inaugural season of the Hearthstone Global Games. That's it for us. Enjoy the live finals. We'll see you next time.